sometimes Matt is fronting alone and has these urges to do things that I would never consider for myself. And then be like, oh man, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I recording a podcast? Well, yeah, I know why I do this. Hey all and every many! Thanks for switching into Housemates for Life, a podcast powered by plurals for plurals and everybody else who wants to hear more about the insanely awesome world of plurality. Here we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly and the beautiful sides of sharing a body and mind. In today's episode, we talk about memory, different types of memories, how memory works for us as a system, and how emotional amnesia affects our daily life, and how we cope with that. We are the voices of just a rather very insane system, aka Jarvis, and I'm your host Matt, together with my headmate Will today. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, Housemates for Life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe, rate, comment and everything else you do to show your support and appreciation. Many thanks. Now without further ado, let's get on with our show. When we think of DID or other dissociative disorders, then one thing that is usually associated with that is memory and amnesia. But there's a lot more to what is commonly known about it through media or education in schools. So we want to talk a bit more in depth about memory, amnesia, and what this can actually mean to many different systems and singular people as well. We are no experts, we're no neuroscientists or psychologists or whatever. This is just what we gathered from our own experience and talking to lots of people. So yeah, this is no educational podcast episode, anything, no medical advice whatsoever. Just us rambling about memory. So when you hear the term memory, then probably usually what most people associate with memory is what we would call personal or biographical memory. So it's all kinds of events and connections that you have to places and people that you have been to or met through through your life, not our life, your life. And all these kind of biographical, personal memories, they all add up to what makes or manifests in your identity. At least that's how it commonly works. You build up your life history and that forms your personality, your reaction patterns, whatsoever, and contributes to your identity, or at least in our case, it feels like that. Then there is the another type of memory that most people are familiar with is factual memory. So you can memorize facts and learn knowledge that you save in your long-term memory. But those kind of memory pieces that are basically quote-unquote just facts, they are basically separate from your personal memory. So for example, if someone experiences temporal amnesia by, I don't know, some accident, brain injury, whatsoever, then usually what people tend to forget in these amnesic episodes is their personal memory, like forgetting your name, forgetting where you live, like all these kind of personal connections that you have in your brain. But the factual memory usually is still working. Like you still can navigate the world around you perfectly fine. You know what You know what a car is. You know what a bottle of water looks like. So all these kind of factual memory pieces are somehow stored differently in the brain than personal memories. I think there are specific terms for that. I can't remember. My factual memory on this point is not working well. I will just quickly look it up. Wait a second. Right, so I just looked it up, and the term I was looking for was episodic memory and semantic memory. So episodic memory is what we call the personal or biographical memory associated with facts about your life events and personal memories, and semantic memory is the memory about facts. It's your knowledge base, basically. And these memories, whether they are personal or factual, they usually go into your long-term memory. So if these are important memories that come up often, memories that you need every now and then, they will then be stored in your long-term memory. Cats are making noise. I hope you don't hear that. Where was I? Oh yeah, short-term memory. So short-term memory, or the working memory, is everything you hold in your brain for a short while you need that information at hand to complete some task in the moment. So, for example, if you want to solve a puzzle or math problem whatsoever, then you need to hold specific information ready in your brain to use while you're about to do this task. Or, for example, if you go to shop groceries, you either have a list with you with all the items listed that you want to buy, or you hold that memory in your brain for that moment. Kitty, you were sleeping fast asleep right now, and now they're making noise. I will just continue talking and just hope it's not gonna bother too much in the background. Okay, groceries. Now my working memory is working really hard. Also, I have my script in front of me with some notes, so that kind of assists my working memory to get quicker back to what I was talking about. So groceries, like when you go grocery shopping, you also have a list to aid your short-term memory, so you don't have to hold all that information in your brain while you're shopping. You can just pick on your list. Oh yeah, I need to buy bread. Oh yeah, I need to buy some milk, whatever. And then usually once that task is done, that memory or that knowledge is gone. You don't need it anymore. It's not saved to your long-term memory. And if somebody asks you a day later or what, and asks you, what did you buy at the grocery store? You're like, well, you can just look into your cupboards or whatever, wherever you store your stuff. You will see it. Or you check the receipt that you got at the store. That you can see what items you bought. But usually you don't really hold that knowledge in your brain for much longer than a day. I don't know. And next is something that you might know about, but is, I think, less talked about when we talk about memory in that sense, is we would call it the physical memory or body or muscle memory. It is less visible in the way that it is more subconscious. It's working more subconsciously and in an automated way, so it's usually not really right in your awareness unless you practice physical body awareness a lot. So again, we're not neurobiologists or medical doctors whatsoever, but as far as we understand it, is that the nervous system kind of memorizes bodily responses or motoric actions that are associated to some external or sometimes also internal cues. So, for example, if you do sports, for example, and you have a certain motion, let's say you play basketball, and the motion of throwing the ball into the basket, your body, your muscles, the more you practice, your muscles will remember that motion. In the beginning, when you get instructions to how to properly throw a ball to gain maximum width, is it width of your throw, or you know what I mean? You can reach further with your throw when you do it in a certain way. And in the beginning, you pay so much attention to how you hold the ball, how you move your legs and your arms, and then your body, your muscles will remember this the more you practice. And at some point, you will just not even think about it anymore. Your muscles have memorized it for you. And this is what makes body memory helpful. It makes your life easier, or it makes it makes life easier for your brain and your body, because it saves resources while you don't have to think about your motions anymore. You can have you can make more effective motions with your muscles, and you don't have to spend any resources anymore on thinking about how to do something. You just do it. It's the same with, for example, if you ever have been driving a car, you probably also know this is, in the beginning, you're totally overwhelmed by all kinds of impressions while sitting in the car on the street. But the more and more you drive and get used to it, the less you think about it. So your brain learns to filter the information, and it makes it easier to focus. And while this is actually a very clever adaptation of nature, with anything, these things can also become maladaptive. So, for example, your muscle memory or your body memory can become outdated, in the sense that some reactions of your body might have been useful in the past. They helped you to cope with a stressful environment, for example, and then you're removed from that environment, so you don't really need that internally memorized program anymore. But the memory is still there, so your body still remembers stressful environment. The body remembers stressful cues, and then still reacts based on that body memory. And this can then look like, in certain situations, it can look like an overreaction of your body system. So, for example, if you are familiar with panic attacks, or even general anxiety, or trauma responses are a perfect example of these kind of outdated or maladaptive body memories. So your body gets an outside cue and then goes into alert mode. Your body remembers stressful environment or stressful situation, and then reacts appropriately as it has learned it in the past, maybe, even though the current situation may not actually require this amount of reaction. But now we want to talk more about emotional memory, because we think this is something that is even less talked about than body memory, and we didn't even know about it until we learned about plurality and all this kind of stuff going on in our brain. So the emotional memory, as far as we understand it and how it kind of works for us, is that it's the memory that associates certain emotions with your episodic memory, your personal biographical memory. And so for example, you may remember an event that happened a day ago, a week ago, years ago, and then immediately you have some sort of feeling or emotion associated with that memory. It may be good, bad, ugly, or whatsoever. It may just be flat emotion. It can be anything. And in the best case, that memory, that association is accurate. So something nice happened to you in the past. You had some nice ice cream, and you associate positive feelings, positive memory with that. All good. Or something dangerous happened to you. You climbed a fence and you fell and hurt yourself. And you remember, climbing fence, that hurts. So next time you see a fence and want to climb it, you be more careful. So you associate some not so nice feelings with climbing fences, which is good, because it helps you to be more careful in dangerous situations, right? So if that kind of memory or these kind of associations work accurately, that can be helpful, right? But then there's this thing about emotional amnesia, which is different from what is commonly understood by amnesia. So emotional amnesia is, in our case at least, we remember events, we remember what happens, but we sometimes associate either no emotion or different emotions with that event than it actually happens in the moment. And this is strong for us as a plural system, because each of us has different opinions on events happening. But this is also something that happens to singular people as well. This also happens to each of us individually as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with being plural, but there's a strong correlation with that. And this emotional amnesia is it's basically a form of dissociation or depersonalization. So it is like you remember an event, but you remember it as if it didn't happen to you, or you remember it, but you remember it differently. So for example, you ate some ice cream, and actually in the moment you actually enjoyed it, but next time you think about the memory and your memory tells you it tasted really bad. I don't know, it's just a silly example, but this is how it could be. You associate different emotions to a memory than it actually happened to you in the moment. And this emotional amnesia or this dissociation, emotional dissociation, can be helpful. It is actually a very natural, clever mechanism of the brain. For example, it helps you to think and act rationally in an emergency, for example. So, I don't know, somebody, you see an accident happening, and instead of being emotionally overwhelmed, your brain basically helps you to dissociate from the situation, helps you to kind of numb your emotions in the moment, to actually think and act rationally to help the person who had an accident. And also, if you are exposed to emotionally overwhelming or even abusive situations that is ongoing, the emotional dissociation can help you in the moment to keep surviving. So if, for example, if you are dependent on an emotional relationship with a person, for example, when you are an infant or a toddler or like young child, and you are dependent on caregivers to provide you with food and shelter and whatsoever, you need to have this emotional relationship with a caregiver. That's something you depend, your life depends on that. But if those caregivers that your life basically depends on, if they put you through emotionally overwhelming abuse at the same time, whether that happens maliciously or accidentally, your brain needs to cope with that situation. Your brain needs to hold that emotional bond with caregivers while also protecting yourself from emotional abuse. So this emotional dissociation will help you to maintain an emotional relationship that is emotionally overwhelming, but at the same time, unfortunately, necessary for you in the moment. And if that is something that you're exposed to repeatedly or for a very long time, then this emotional amnesia that is helpful in the moment can become maladaptive. It can become your go-to coping strategy with emotional overwhelm or stress. And it can become a habit, or just like the physical memory, your emotional memory can tend to overreact in everyday situations that might not actually be that scary or stressful or overwhelming, but your emotional memory, your association with certain cues is just going to overreact in those situations. Because that's how you learned it, and how your emotional memory basically remembers these things. And this is not to say that plurality in itself is maladaptive. It's just the emotional dissociation that can come with being plural can cause problems in everyday life. It doesn't have to, but it can happen, and it does happen to us. And it doesn't only happen to plural people. This also happens to a lot of singular people, whether you're aware of it or not. But something that is also very common is that some people learn to numb their emotions. They become blind, basically, towards their own personal needs. They don't act authentically in affect, and so this is also a form of emotional amnesia because you've kind of got lost touch with your actual emotional responses in certain situations. Okay, so far so good. So much about the blah blah and background about memories and in general, or types of memories that we could find and identify. Now a bit more personal, like how we want to talk about how does memory work for us, especially for us as a plural system. So I don't know if we mentioned this before, but we mostly relate to OSDD systems. So OSDD stands for Other Specified Dissociative Disorder. It's kind of it's like when you don't qualify for DID, when you don't experience amnesia, then you there's this other category of diagnosis, but whatever, fuck labels. We don't care really how we fall into some diagnostic criteria. This is just whenever OSDD systems or people who are diagnosed as having OSDD, when they describe their systems and memory workings, blah blah, then we tend to relate to that more than to DID systems. But yeah, it really doesn't matter, honestly. It's just to clarify where we're coming from, because we don't know what it's like to actually live with amnesia. So you better check out some other resources for that. So basically, what our memory looks like, well, it doesn't look like anything, but we imagine it being this cloud server in our brain, and we all have access to that. So we all have we share the same collective biographical memory. We all can look at our past as a human being, and we can all see the same memories in there, or we think we do. Ooh, this gets mindfuckery. Whatever. We basically we can even remember what our housemates did. So I know what Will did this morning. Went to the grocery store. I can remember that. But yeah, I don't really associate myself with going to the grocery store. I sometimes join co-consciously and say I want ice cream, but yeah, I'm not. I don't feel like when I look at that memory, it doesn't feel like I went there. But yeah, that's the thing. We share memory. There's no privacy. Basically, we know each other sometimes better than we know ourselves individually. Yeah, the thing just is that we share memory, but we look at it differently. So I log on to, when I switch in, I log on to the computer, I have access to the memory cloud, and I look at the files and be like, okay, yeah, we went to the grocery store, bought some ice cream for me. That's nice, that's cool. When I will look into the freezer later, I will be like, yes, there's ice cream. But yeah, it's, don't even know how to describe it. It's so natural for us. It's so silly to actually even try to explain it. But I guess it's weird for, if you're not plural, this might be weird to hear, but yeah, it's just how it is. Dang it. So yeah, we experience this discontinuity of emotional responses and self-association to our biographical memory. And before knowing about plurality, we just thought we were just a very chaotic person. I mean, we are still, but things seem more clearer now, a little bit. So in the past it was like, oh, one day I like ice cream, and and the next day I'm like, yeah, I don't care. You got completely different tastes in things you want to do, you want to eat, you want to be with people and all that. So it's wild. and we thought this is normal. This is like how everybody goes through their life. I mean, yeah, no, not a single person can be in the same mood every day or every moment. Of course, you change tastes and all these things, but yeah, sometimes it just feels way more drastically. But we will talk about this a bit later. Yeah, in other ways, we actually have very good memory. So we would never ever have associated ourselves with anything related to a lack of memory or quote unquote broken memory. I don't know, because yeah, we sometimes remember silly facts all the time. If you tell us our birthday, not our birthday, your birthday, we will remember it probably forever. It's so please don't tell us your birthday, because our memory cloud gets full. It's exhausting to hold all these memory, and we have no way of throwing it out, deleting it permanently. This is mainly because our memory is very visual. So I think we mentioned this before, we experience synesthesia, and things like weekdays or month of the year, they are arranged in space for us. So it's very easy to recall memories from the past because they are all stored at a very specific place in our head. It's like we have this map of years of our lifetime, and we have instant access to that map, and we can just look at it and we see whatever happened. I mean, it's not that perfect. It's not like I can recall the exact date, time of events, but we tend to be much better at memorizing events in the past than most people we meet casually. And this happens also with the birthday. So if you tell us your birthday, your face will automatically appear on our map calendar of the year. And then the calendar just got full. There's like some visual overload of unnecessary memories. So yeah, it can be helpful in some way. So time management gets much easier when you can see when you can just like, it's like you're playing a video game and you have this visual overlay on top of whatever you're doing, and you can just easily access your calendar just by looking at it without pulling out your phone or physical calendar. So that can be helpful, but it can also become very easily overwhelming and distressing if it just gets too much. So if too much is going on in your graphical user interface, then you can hardly focus on what you're actually doing in your quote-unquote game. And since we learned about plurality and all these things, we actually wonder if our memory is really that good, or if we just learned all these kind of additional coping mechanisms on top of it, because we are also excessive note takers, giving a side look over to my headmate Will, being an excessive note taker, noting down every little piece of information that we might need in the near future. And we wonder, are we really that good at memorizing things, or are we just really good at coping with bad memory? I don't know. Either way, I think we're doing okay. Yeah, that being said, so we mentioned it before, we do struggle with emotional amnesia though. And so we want to talk about how does emotional amnesia affect our daily life? And one thing that comes to my mind, Matt's mind, I mean, we all share the same mind, but you know what I mean. Something that that pops up for me immediately when I think about emotional amnesia is burnout, and how I experience it from my personal perspective as an individual. Because usually when we are totally burned out, when we hit the maximum stress tolerance level whatsoever, then what happens is usually my headmate Will, who's usually at least co-conscious with me, or usually actually fronting, gets completely exhausted, retreats to the back seats, and I'm left all alone in the front row of our collective bus. And I'm there, I'm like, I feel totally great. I feel completely energetic. I feel like I can do whatever I want in my life. I'm absolutely excited, full of motivation. I'm just the best version of myself, basically, in those moments. But what I have learned is that when I'm out alone in front, and the days before have been quite stressful, then I might feel very energetic, but our system, our collective system, our body might be completely exhausted, completely burned out, and I might just be running on reserve mode in that moment. So in the past, that was really bad because I didn't know, right? I just did not know. I just felt really great. I actually felt like, wow, I'm super stress resilient. Whatever life throws at me the next day, I just feel completely energetic and I can do whatever, you know. Yeah, no, no, not anymore. Now I know that in those moments, even though I really, really want to do some stuff, I just can't. I should not. I should just chill out and give my system the rest that it needs. So that mechanism that our brain learned might have been useful in some situations in the past, but yeah, in the long term, it just leads to more and more burnout, and yeah, it almost feels like we are chronically burned out. And yeah, it's become maladaptive. But yeah, we try to find ways to cope with that. But that's for the last part of this episode. And yeah, I think actually the next part Will wanted to talk about this, but right now I feel so strongly at the front. I don't know if I actually want to switch out. So I'm just going to continue here and try to explain this from my perspective. So this is a great example of how emotional amnesia affects our daily life. It happens to us the last few days or weeks, is that we, or in particular Will, has been thinking a lot about this podcast, and had a lot of self-doubts whether we actually should do this. It sounded like a great idea last summer, but now now he has some doubts about it because he feels, see, it's so difficult to explain to you right now how he feels about this podcast because I feel completely different about it. Okay, I try. Maybe we'll switch in later and we will just paste in his comment on this. I don't know. But let me try. So I'm trying. Let me collect myself first. Okay, I try. I can't. He just doesn't like it as much as I do, okay? He likes the editing part. That's something he thinks of as some calm pastime where nobody is bothering him. He can just be absorbed in the editing process and spend a few hours on that part. So he likes that. But all the rest he is like, nah. And so he's like, should I really put in all this work, all these hours into this project when it's kind of bringing him not as much joy as, I don't know, something else? But then today, for example, after we're finishing his groceries, I switched in or became co-conscious. And I was super excited recording this episode today. It was planned, but like I also switched in and I was like, I can't wait to record this episode. I'm so excited. I want to talk into this microphone and I just love it. And yeah, so basically as I became more and more co-conscious and eventually switched in, it's like my emotions, my emotional memory associated with this podcast project completely takes over our shared consciousness whatsoever. And yeah, I feel completely different about this. I have completely different set of emotions related to this. And it's hard. It's difficult for Will, especially because he needs to actively remind himself that I may not like it, but Matt likes this podcast, something like that. That was my Will impression. And I need to like actively tell him, dude, I love this, okay? I like doing this and I want to do this and I'm so grateful that I can do this right now. And basically I'm storing my emotions in our shared memory, like not the emotions in particular, but I basically, the more I repeat how much I like it, the more my other handmaids need to believe it because it came out of this mouth, right? But this is how we cope with it. Wait, this comes at the last part. We're still at how it affects our daily life, and one thing is something we struggle with a lot is the lack of control we have sometimes. We mentioned this in the previous episode on blurriness and identity confusion, is that when we blur together, it's harder to, if nobody has a grip on the steering wheel, then it's hard to feel in control. And this is the same with emotional amnesia. So if for example, if I'm driving the bus right now with my hands on the wheel, tight grip, my driving style, it's hard for me to remember or put myself into the mindset of my handmaids. So I might do things or say things that may feel right to me in the moment, but that may not correspond to how we feel collectively. And this gives us some sort of feeling of inauthenticity. Do you say that? That happens especially to me, Matt, a lot, is that I give off the quote-unquote wrong impression to people outside often. Like the example from before, me being hyper energetic, but our system actually being completely burned out. That if I front in these moments and people experience us as our bus, me driving our bus, and people see only the bus driving, they can't see inside, right? Even for us, it's sometimes difficult to look inside the bus. But when people only see me driving the bus, that's just not our internal reality, right? It's one reality, it's my reality maybe, but it's not our collective reality. Does that make sense? I don't know. Oh yeah, peeking at the notes, there's something else that Will wanted to talk about. I'm so sorry I'm taking over your parts, but yeah, I just want to do this right now. Okay, so no, I can't. I want to take your parts, but I can't. You should talk about this yourself. Maybe after this. So probably now we will cut in Will's part now, and I will be I will be back right after that one. See ya, or hear ya. No, you hear me. I don't hear you. Whatever. Okay, so this is Will now. After a whole week, I think, since last time Matt recorded his part, which is kind of weird to listen to him talking about me recording my part now. It's bizarre. But maybe that's not actually unique to plurals. I don't know if... Well, we used to understand ourselves as one single individual in the past as well, because we had no other real framework to think about our self-concept. And I don't know, maybe we're just projecting onto singlet perception, but it just always felt natural to us that, yeah, sure, I'm a new person every day and I'm a different mood every hour or whatever. Of course, I think differently about things when time goes on. I don't know how to explain that, but nowadays we're not even actually sure if we are actually able to imagine what it feels like to be one person, one individual in one body. I have no idea. I'm not even trying anymore. Anyhow, speaking of memory, I don't really remember much of what Matt talked about last week. I mean, I got the notes here, so I will just stick to that and hope I'm not repeating anything. Bear with me, please. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is that in the past I used to think that I'm always navigating myself into situations that I don't actually like to be in. Especially social activities. So it would often happen that, well, back then we didn't know better, but what we guess is what happened is that one of us wanted to do something, some social activity, meet a friend or whatever, and plan all this and maybe even go there. But then I would switch in and feel completely out of place, like being like, why am I here? I don't like this. Why am I doing this to myself? And I would feel I had a lot of self-blame issues because of that. Because it would happen again and again and again. Every time I would swear to myself, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore because I really don't want this. But then it would just happen over and over and over. And I'm also not blaming my handmaids. I mean, they didn't know better either. But yeah, it was some ongoing struggle for us, me in particular. And it still is sometimes. So sometimes Matt is fronting alone and has these urges to do things that I would never consider for myself. And then be like, oh man, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I recording a podcast? Well, yeah, I know why I do this. And yeah, so this kind of emotional inconsistency is not just about hobbies, but it's especially about people. So our level of attachment towards other people is very, very different from handmade to handmade. And well, in the past it felt like, okay, we are just having a very disorganized, chaotic attachment style towards other people. Well, actually, we as individual handmaids, we're rather consistent with our attachment. It's just that between each other, we are very inconsistent. And that is difficult to handle and navigate. Because often, as we said in the previous episode, we feel often very blurry or blendy. So our different attachments kind of mingle together, and sometimes they just don't make sense together at all, and it's just confusing, and we don't know what kind of feelings to trust. I mean, all feelings are valid, but when you have all the feelings, what do you do with that, right? So yeah, we not sure if we actually have good strategies for that yet. And one big example where we noticed this really a lot is that it feels like almost everyone in our system is aromantic, so we don't really feel romantically attracted to other people, except for Matt, who is overly romantic at times. Even polyromantic sometimes, I guess. So he feels a lot of spontaneous romantic attraction to people, and sometimes very intense. And then I switch in, and I'm like, I feel nothing. I just have no interest in that person or whatever. And that's confusing as hell. Especially like, yeah, I remember one example with a person where he was so all over the place with that person, and we would meet up, and he would just be overly happily talking to that person, and then at some point I just switch in, and I just feel like this really awkward, quiet dude. I'm like, yeah, I really don't know what to actually talk about with that person. We have nothing in common. I'm just there, and I'm like, okay, this is awkward. Yeah, and this is these are some major points how emotional amnesia affects our daily life. I mean, there's also a lot about how it affects our relationship with events in the past. Like how we think differently about events that happened a long time ago. Yeah, and it also has a lot to do with depersonalization, but I feel like I will cover this in a separate episode. I think that's a big chapter. I think I mentioned that many times before. Dissociation and depersonalization. It's coming eventually. Please be patient. So this is all I got to say. So we'll just stop here and we continue with the rest of Matt's part. All right, I'm back. Matt is back. For you, it's been a while. For me, not. Now we come to the last part. How do we actually cope with emotional amnesia? Da 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 da. And similar with the blurriness, well, we cope a bit better with the emotional amnesia part, but it's still coping with it doesn't mean that we actually like it or that it's easy, okay? But we have some strategies in place that help us navigating life with it. And one thing that helps, first of all, is being aware of our system. That has helped so much dealing with emotional amnesia, because before we didn't even know that this is a thing. We didn't even know that this is happening to us. We just thought we are this chaotic maniac. We consider things like being bipolar or whatever. Maybe we are also, but who knows? So I think people who experience bipolar disorder might actually relate a lot to emotional amnesia. I don't know. Maybe not. Tell us in the comments. But yeah, just knowing that, I said it before, just knowing that when I'm alone up front and feeling very great about myself, it doesn't necessarily mean that this applies to my whole system. Just knowing that fact helped us to understand better regulate our collective energy. I mean, it's still a work in progress, okay? But just the awareness alone has helped so much. Yeah, and in general, one thing that's very important is acceptance and communication. So all feelings are valid. So whatever I feel right now in the moment, I accept that this is not what we all feel collectively. And what has been helping us is, for example, journaling or taking notes. So even before we knew that we're a system, we have been journaling sometimes about certain quote-unquote mood swings that we experienced. So when we were suddenly overwhelmed by depression, we would journal about it, and then the next day, when all the symptoms of depression suddenly gone, because probably, we don't know for sure, but it's probably what's happened is that somebody else is just switching in, and emotional memory is just gone. So we noticed these things, we just didn't know what's going on, and we just tried to figure it out by journaling, taking notes, writing about our emotions from different perspectives on different days. And nowadays our internal communication is far better, or well, now we know that we can communicate internally. We often just do it like that, but sometimes on important things it helps to still take notes, write things out, or speak things out loud. Just to, because if you manifest something somewhere in the physical world, in what form ever, it helps with things like doubts, because it's the same with this podcast, right? So I record this right now and I'm absolutely happy and joyful. So next time Will sits down and edits this stuff, you will remember that I enjoy this. even though he might feel completely different about it. Yeah, and in addition to that, we hold regular team meetings, usually once a month. Well, this is possible for us as a very small systems. If you're a larger system, you might have to implement meetings in different ways or forms. But we have these monthly meetings with our main core members, however you call it, or whoever wants to be part of that team gets to participate in these team meetings. And yeah, it just helps us to get a grasp what we collectively want and what we collectively need, or where we want to collectively direct our life and bus. And so even though I may not feel like, or maybe the other way around, even though maybe Will may not feel like doing a podcast series, most of the time he knows I want it. We discussed it at the team meeting at some point. We made that, we discussed it very thoroughly, made it one big major project in this life period, whatever. So even though he may not be as into it as I am, he still knows this is a direction for this collective bus that we once chose at one of our meetings. So that's what we do right now. And of course, nothing is set in stone. We always need to check in regularly if the choices we make, if they are still valid or reasonable. But it gives us some kind of direction, collective direction, so to speak. And yeah, one thing that we wish we were better at it, we try to learn, is that we try to postpone answers and reactions. For example, when we talk to somebody and get asked, hey, do you want to do this and that on a Saturday with me? Then if I was at front, I would probably say yes, of course. But yeah, we need to try to learn to ask the whole system first, or at least the major actors in our systems. In our system, we're only one system, right? So that way, my emotions or the emotions of one individual member of the system won't just take over the whole system. But we actually make sure that everybody feels heard, everybody feels like their needs are met, even though that's extremely difficult. But yeah, we can at least try, right? One thing that is very important to navigate emotional amnesia is to learn to evaluate the well-being of the system. So yeah, learning to communicate, ask each chatmate directly, individually, or what I often try to do, as Matt, I try to judge our well-being by facts. So rather than listening to my current emotional feelings, I look at, okay, what did we do yesterday? How did we feel yesterday? What happened yesterday? And if I remember, oh, we were pretty exhausted, we were just lying around all day, something like that. And then the next day, I'm alone, I wake up alone in the morning, for example, then I know, okay, somebody is really exhausted here, and I'm the last resort. I gotta deal with life now on my own. So yeah, I try to evaluate our well-being by facts rather than my actual emotional state. This may or may not work well. Also, what helps is getting to know each other. So by now, I know my system members very well, especially Will, who's co-fronting with me, co-piloting this bus with me a lot. So I have learned to know his wants and needs mostly better than he himself. So I can learn to react for him in a way. So instead of reacting upon my own emotions and opinions, I can, even though I can't maybe always ask directly in the moment my system members, I can learn to know what they would say in the moment or how they would feel about it in the moment. So I'm like, yeah, I want to do this and that, but my friend over here would prefer this and that, so let me see how we can compromise here, and so on and so on. But as I said, this would be ideal. But yeah, most of the time we are blurry anyway, so screw all these plans. Yeah, we are learning. It's still a learning curve. And this is it for this episode today on memory and emotional amnesia. We talked about a few different types of memory and how memory works for our plural system, how it affects our daily life, and how we try to cope with it. I hope you learned one or few tricks. And yeah, maybe you have your own little coping life hacks with emotional amnesia or other forms of amnesia. Please let us know in the comments. This episode was brought to you by the Voices of Jarvis, with me, Matt, as your host, and we had a little snapshot of Will here today. Thank you all beautiful souls for listening and your support. It's very appreciated. If you enjoyed this episode and think it brought a little bit of value to your life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe, rate, comment, and everything else you do to show your support and appreciation. Follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and visit our website housematesforlife.com so you never miss the latest news about our podcast and more. If you have feedback, questions, suggestions, please don't hesitate to write a comment or contact us. As I always like to say, let your personality shine brighter than your eyes and your confidence shout louder than your voice. Until next time with Housemates for Life. And in the end, as always, a few outtakes for your chuckle muscle. Roll the intro. Okay. Yep. For example, if somebody experiences temporal amnesia from a brain injury or something like that, I forgot what I wanted to say. Well, not there. Blah. What am I trying to say? Something nice happened to. Well, I hit the microphone. Sorry. That is that can be very strugglesome. So, whoops, microphone, why are you in the way? Hello? I don't even know if the audio's set up correctly. Wait. Excuse me. What the fuck? And what helps with that is, or has helped for us, I don't know. If you enjoyed this episode and think it brought a little bit of value to your life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe. Again. Follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and visit our website housematesforlife.com so you never miss the... Follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and visit our website housematesforlife.com so you never miss the latest news about our podcast and more. Let's do that again.